Good morning, Art. I finally made it. So, uh, welcome everyone. Sorry to be here with my hair on fire as usual. That's the way my life rolls. I'm just getting set up. Be with you in just a moment. Okay. Everybody have a good week. Hope so. I had to get myself a glass of water and empty the dehumidifier in this room, or I would drown before the end of the class. So that's where I was. Um, yep, I'm fine. Everything's cool. Um, I'm about to become 79 years old, though, so I'm as all right as a 79-year-old can be. And so, okay. All right. So I apologize for being a few minutes late. I'm always aiming at the right time, but I don't often hit it, unfortunately. My modus operandi seems to be 5 minutes late, 5 to 15 minutes late. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the soul's desire to become new, Jung's journey and our initiation by Kate Burns. And I think I better read a little bit about Kate Burns. Uh, Here's Amela. Good. Okay, Kate Burns. Kate Burns is a Jungian analyst with a private practice in Houston, Texas. With an undergraduate degree in mathematics, she worked as a geophysicist until a downturn in the oil industry sent her back to school for an MBA from from Rice University. A desire to explore spiritual issues at midlife led her to pursue a master's degree in counseling psychology, followed by studies into Jungian thought, which culminated in a diploma from the International School of Analytical Psychology in Zurich. She has taught classes at the Jung Center in Houston since 2005 and has devoted herself to the practice and philosophy of yoga since 2000. She currently serves on the board of directors of Jungians in Training Zurich, an organization dedicated to raising awareness about C.G. Jung, his life and work. And that is Kate Burns. So we are. Oh, Art, your birthday was last Tuesday. I'm sorry, I should make a note of that. I will make a note of it now. I didn't realize I had missed it. Um, Happy birthday. Okay. Um, so next year I'll be sure to celebrate it, or I'll do my best to be sure to celebrate it, assuming I will be here. Uh, it's always a little iffy, but anyway. Um, she begins her essay. Soul's desire to become new, Jung's journey, our initiation. Okay, and so I think what Dr. Burns is saying is that reading the Red Book is a kind of initiation for us. So she begins with a 6-line quote from Jung. Believe me, it is no teaching and no instruction that I give you. On what basis should I presume to teach you? I give you news of the way of this man, but not of your own way. My path is not your path. Therefore, I cannot teach you. The way is within us, but not in God's, nor in teachings, nor in laws. Within us is the way, the truth, and the life. Okay, so that is a quote from the very first chapter, even some call it the prologue of the Red Book. And his point is that he is not teaching, he is showing you the way. And he certainly showed me the way, and I'm gradually putting all this together over the last 35 years. Anyway, I'm reading from Jung's Red Book for Our Time, Searching for Soul Under Postmodern Conditions, edited by, okay, Murray Stein and Thomas Arst. Okay. Given the disclaimer quoted above and reiterated a number of times throughout Jung's work, how does studying the way of this man help us who are 21st century individuals struggling to navigate through a world inundated with information perched in cyberspace? Challenged by cataclysmic destruction inherent in climate change, confronted with the threat of nuclear annihilation, overwhelmed by a panoply of exploitive marketing and ruffled by a um, kaleidoscope, ruffled by a kaleidoscopic fusion of cultures, all threatening to reduce the individual to a tangle of mitochondria moving like a zombie through a gray maze of dystopian meaninglessness. A few people will read the Red Book in a spirit of fascination with the colorful, mythic array of archetypal images and with appreciation for the wisdom expressed through Jung's authentic experience and expansive scholarship. However, what about the billions of other people who struggle completely overwhelmed to find time amid a 50-plus-hour work week to engage in a nourishing personal life while they strive to keep abreast of nonstop tragedy in the news, express themselves daily in social media, blogs, and then exercise their bodies? What can the Red Book offer them? Good question. And I think we're going to get a good answer here. Rather than a method, a workbook, or a prescriptive solution for a suffering soul, Jung's Red Book offers the example of one man, while it ushers readers into an imaginal journey through an array of earth spaces, symbolically describing a heart-wrenching and mind-opening experience that took Jung, by his own admission, to the edge of madness. He did not cross over. But why? By gathering all his knowledge and all his courage and curiosity, and by submitting them to the humility of a wanderer with the inquisitive nature and scholarship of a researcher and the innocent playfulness of a child, Jung received and artfully recorded his own unique experience in an effort to hear and understand the longing of his soul. His life had entered a time of personal change and devoted contemplation, perhaps in part prompted by a relational break with with friend, mentor, and colleague Sigmund Freud. More importantly, Jung found himself in a time of personal transition, certainly mirrored by the world, which stood at the threshold of World War I. He labored in the throes of violent and extended various visions of bloody destruction that later seemed to anticipate World War I to the extent that he fell ill with confusion. He later writes, "Because I carried the war in me, I foresaw it. Jung's dreams disturbed him with catastrophic images so immense that he released himself from the majority of his societal obligations and entered into dialogue with the unconscious. He structured his life so that during the morning he would consult with patients and answer correspondence. Then he would spend the afternoon and evening in uninterrupted dialogue with his soul. Messages came to him through the imagery of dreams, visions, and intentional inner dialogue he later termed active imagination. The reader encounters heart-rending struggle, honest humility, and perpetual faith not to some legendary being that many refer to as God, but faith that life will find the better way. Jung wrote in his Red Book of his feelings of turmoil and confusion, during which, quote, "I was with a youth in high mountains. It was before daybreak. The eastern sky was already light. Then Siegfried's horn resounded over the mountains with a jubilant sound. We knew that our mortal enemy was coming. We were armed and lurked beside a narrow rocky path to murder him. Then we saw him coming high across the mountains on a chariot made of the bones of the dead. He drove boldly and magnificently over the steep rocks and arrived at the narrow path where we waited in hiding. As he came around the turn ahead of us, we fired at the same time, and he fell slain." At first, Jung struggled to solve the riddle of his vision of Siegfried and the heroic conquistador of Germanic myth. The overwhelming intensity of this strongly transported Jung to the threshold of suicide. Such an inner quandary could have hurled even the strongest of personalities into a major depressive episode, but no evidence indicates that Jung ever fell into paralyzing depression. When he realized that in the vision he had killed his own ideal of himself as doctor, professor, author, and researcher, he knew he had arrived at a time in his life that had culminated in great accomplishment. But now his soul called him back to a deeper relationship with a more complete perspective of himself and the world. Jung's soul commanded renewal, the necessity to sacrifice his past heroic attitude and expectations so that a more comprehensive gnosis and scholarship could unfold. Okay, that was a lot, and I'm going to stop and look at your comments about it. Obviously, this is one of the major scenes in the Red Book. Jung uh, killing imaginally his hero in German culture. And this does not mean anybody should be killed in real life. And this is very important for our current day, of course, because of the murder of Charlie Kirk. Um, when you have a dream or a vision like that, it's not a dream or vision that one should act on in the physical world. One should learn what it means and learn what are the tools to change the situation. And Amela, do you want to speak on this?
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I am down with the fever,
Oh,
so I'll try my best to look healthy. But I'd love to hear what others have to say.
okay, Deborah. Hi, all. Happy birthday for uh, last Tuesday, Art Patterson. Yes, happy birthday, Art. I'm sorry, I've made a note. I'm going to put it in my uh, ever ready iPhone, and sometimes I do miss, but uh, but I will do my best to remember your birthday in the future. Art Patterson is the most loyal follower of this YouTube channel, just so everyone knows. And he has certain personal afflictions, which I'm not going to go into. Um, but he has chosen us, and I'm very honored that he's chosen us as his regular go-to source of some sort of solace, I suppose. Um, and Deborah says the status of doctor up is a persona. Yes, it is a persona, high grade persona, but still uh, can distract. And yeah, obviously that is true. Everything that we do um, is a persona. I try not to have a very um, defined persona on this website, on this YouTube channel, because I know that my path is not your path. And what I'm trying to do is make available to you, wherever you are in the world, Dr. Jung's thoughts and Dr. Jung's experience so that you can do something with it. And a Jungian analyst who was the son of the woman who um, took down Jung's memoirs called Memories, Dreams, Reflections, and helped turn that into a book. Daniela Jaffe, her son, Dr. Lawrence Jaffe, who sadly died early in 2003, summed up Jung's whole oeuvre as in one sentence. And this is really profound, and I hope you'll pay attention. The purpose of Jung's whole psychology is to make accessible to us that healing power which resides in our unconscious. So everything that Jung did was to open up your unconscious so that you can be healed, and to understand that all traditions, all religious traditions do the same thing. They um, through their ritual and through their following, opens the healing power of the unconscious. When you go to a funeral, for example, um, you can't bring back the dead and you can't do anything to help the dead. The dead are dead. But you can um, experience the healing of the unconscious. And I hope everyone understands that. And so Dr. Jung, as he's going through the Red Book period, especially the most intense part, 80% of the Red Book per se occurred in a 10-week period. And so all those visions that he had uh, came upon him in a big rush at one particular time, about 6 months before World War One. And in part, they helped him uh, recognize the collective unconscious, which is obviously a very important thing in society, and we all need to understand that collective unconscious. And he showed us what he went through. Now, your his suggestion was that everybody have their own red book. So what he did was he had what he called a precious, which was basically a very valuable scrapbook. And into that scrapbook, he put the most profound things in his life. And that's the Red Book. And he demonstrated its significance by writing it in German calligraphy, which was very difficult. He didn't use his everyday handwriting. And he wanted to emphasize the importance of what he was doing. And he worked on it for 15 years. And it represents, uh, in a sense, it represents alchemy, which he did not understand at that point in time. Alchemy had stopped being taught in universities about 300 years before Jung's time, and it had been studied for about 1700 years. Um, and but it wasn't understood by the scientific method, and therefore it was just a mystery to people. But Jung started to see that there were some parallels to alchemy, and he wanted to know what those were and what they meant. So he made a study of it, and then in 1928, um, Richard Wilhelm, who had been a missionary in China, had translated The Secret of the Golden Flower, which was a Chinese treatise on alchemy. And Wilhelm knew enough about Jung's work to ask Jung to write an introduction to The Secret of the Golden Flower. And Jung was thrilled because he finally saw that somewhere human beings had an experience or were having experiences similar to his, and therefore had a precedent in history. And because of that, he then started to focus um, in his major work on the study of alchemy itself and trying to understand that the alchemists were actually early psychologists who were the precursors of what today we call alchemy. Um, and anyway, okay.
And also probably pharmacists too, right?
Yep,
Because they
absolutely.
play with so many different elements.
Yep, pharmacists and chemists all point back to alchemy as the originator, and it wasn't the alchemists only, because even before the time of Christ, there were uh, in ancient Greece and Rome, there were in essence psychology sessions. And so if you go to um, I believe it's Ephesus in Turkey. You can see ancient Greek temples that actually have rooms in which people would lie down to talk about their issues with the priest. And, and so that's a demonstration that they were doing this long back. And, obviously the Oracle of Delphi, those
Well,
priestesses.
for a very, very long time, uh, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Well, for a long time, there's been alchemy, and so the priestesses at Delphi. Um, and if you don't know anything about Delphi, you should look it up on the internet because the place itself in Greece is in the mountains. It's hidden away, and there are these caves where the Delphic priestesses would do their work. And apparently they um, would sit over a vent that sent out uh, noxious gases, which caused them to have visions. And and so they were very able to say amazing things. And people came to Delphi for over 1,000 years. And uh, there are still many monuments in Delphi that were put there um, in stone by the people who had come to Delphi and been helped. Many famous people even in antiquity would come to Delphi to receive the visions of these women. Okay.
Yes, I remember now. For a very, very long time, people would go and seek, especially very prominent people like
Yeah,
political figures,
right.
um, and spiritual leaders. They would confide in some kind of an oracle. And so, one of the things that that is so interesting is that for a very, very long time, women have been burned at the stake for witchcraft and sorcery, but at the same time, before, so it's kind of like this paradox of newer beliefs and newer systems.
Yeah.
However, at the end of the day, um, spirituality is spirituality. And, I've said this before, I'm a huge fan of Simone de Beauvoir, and
Hmm.
she's a existentialist philosopher.
Yes.
And so, there's just some things in the human existence, in the human needs. There are some things in that are just existential problems that no matter what, in my belief, no matter what decade we're in, no matter what century we're in, the human condition will always prevail. So right now, if I'm going through a terrible breakup and I try to, drown myself from a cliff because my academic partner is amor fati, and now, what was her name, like that Greek academic, Hippia, it wasn't Hypatia, it was Hippia.
Yeah.
And so she jumped to her death off the cliff. I have a picture of her sculpture by my study. And so a lot of people do that. And today, when someone tries to commit suicide because of amor fati, they get institutionalized. but
Yeah. Yeah.
but so I don't recommend self-harm or harming others at all.
Right.
But the human condition will always prevail. We're always going to feel not confident or overly confident. And there are words for that, and as a civilization we continue to expand. And so, for example, right now we can even see in the refugee crisis that was and that still is,
Yep.
that now many countries are just going to have to assimilate with the fact that now we're no longer going to be um, just one type of race. We're going to be multi ethnic. So this means that
As a species, we are going to be.
exactly.
Yep.
And what happened was last week, this woman, she thought that I was a Turkish immigrant. And I told her, actually, I'm not a Turkish immigrant. My mother is native to the land.
Hmm.
And she said to me, well, you're probably Turkish by descent. And I said to her, actually, no, you're wrong, because we're Caucasians and you look a little bit Indian. Therefore, you're more Indo-Asian. So she was very upset about that. But I said to her, it's about hereditary and it's about genetics. And I'm not a geneticist and I don't focus on the hereditary sciences, but anyone with basic knowledge or the basic concept of Charles Darwin, that's basically the foundation of Darwinism, is that we assimilate to our physiological features, assimilate to our environments. And so, because my mother and her clan or her tribe is originally from a place where it's very high up in the mountains, like about 4,000 meters or something like that from sea level,
Yeah.
just really high up there. And so our physical features may differ than someone from like the wetlands in Scotland or something like that.
Right. Right. And oh my goodness, I had a friend that used to describe Asian people and the fact that they had an extra bit of eyelid, which caused their eyes to be more slanted, as we see. And I have three grandchildren who are Asian American, but that feature came from fighting through the winters in Mongolia and um, the Altai Mountains. The Japanese and the Koreans are Altaic people. They descend from people who are in the Altai Mountains, and so their features reflect that. And so anyway, what I
And
want to,
I'm so sorry, to be honest, I think this essay is so confusing because at first we start off with what seems to be like metaphysics, and then we kind of go into like the existential of here we are on Earth. And then so there's a lot going on in just that. I don't know how many pages you've read to us so far, like 2 pages,
yeah,
and there's just so much going on, but it's
well,
very relevant. But if I
right,
was an
and
English teacher, I would probably be pissed off. Like, what's
yeah,
going on?
maybe. Yeah, maybe so. I mean, it's a lot to deal with, and this is what happens in therapy also because people have gain access to the healing power of their unconscious. That's what happens. And the doctor can't say what's going to happen with your future. They can't predict the future, but they can help open your unconscious for you so that you can, or they can make accessible your unconscious so you can have the healing power of the unconscious. And as Jung clearly said in that part of the Red Book in the first chapter, life will find a better way. And so as we look at the current events and we realize that Charlie Kirk was murdered this week, that's not a good way to live, and it's not a good way for the future. But as a result of the fact of his murder, uh, all of us unconsciously are told that we need to find a better way. We, we we as human beings need to find a better way to resolve our differences. Okay. Um, so I'm going to go back here and look at the YouTube for a bit. Um, so Deborah was talking about how a doctor's persona is a high grade persona, but still it can distract. And obviously all personas can distract because you don't know anything about me really. Um, I present a persona on this YouTube channel. Amela the same. We both present our own uh, personas. But what we do by our conversation is make accessible to you your unconscious so that you can then find a better way. Your life can find a better way. I'd say that's one of the objectives here, although I didn't know it uh, until recently. I've been trying to figure out what Dr. Jung meant in the Red Book for years. I've actually um, read it online 3 different times now. So if you want to know what's in the Red Book, you can find my reading of it on this YouTube channel. But let me move on here. So we hide behind our personas anyway, even if we don't think we are or we don't intend to, still we have a persona that um, hides our true self um, behind a mask, and we can never, even if we're existentialists, we can never um, really reveal our true self. Only we know. Um, so, so Abraxas says, mind from the matrix. Yeah. Deborah says, I've become very activated with Jung now. I'm participating in this channel. It's great to see you. We missed you on Wednesday, Deborah, but I'm glad that you're willing to stay up with us. Deborah lives in Australia, so for her, it's now, I don't know, 20 to 1 in the morning. But she is so committed that she's willing to stay up. And if she wants to come to our Wednesday session, which she has done once, she has to get up very early in the morning at 7 in the morning her time in order to just be at the start of one of our sessions. Um, and so let's see. Cherie says, hello, everyone. My apologies for being late. I was listening to Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, uh, number 5, Opus 67, uh, by Fem Frixie, I guess, in the Berliner Harmonic or Austria Orchestra. Um, Well, welcome, Cherie. That's a good place to start, and it certainly can open the unconscious. I discovered it in my high school days, and I used it very much. Um, let's see. Deborah says Jung discovered the collective unconscious with the research on dreams and realized the commonality in them with the work done by researchers assisting him, and realized the dreams were anticipating war. Uh, correct. And Kathy's here. Hi, Kathy. Uh, let's see. And our Archiphanes says, Pharmacia ave sol invictus. I have soul within us, I guess. Deborah C. A lot of modern life involves self-abandonment, and traditional ways help us connect to wisdom. Absolutely. That's very true. All the religions do that. And the gods will withdraw from earth to heaven, says Archiphanes. Foreigners pouring into the land will neglect religion, duties to gods, and divine worship will be prohibited with penal ties, according to Hermes. Um, The whole land will be filled with sepulchres and the dead. Only stories of your religion will survive, and these your children will not believe. The very air will hang heavy in lifeless torpor. Such will be the old age of the world. Irreligion, disorder, and unreason concerning all that is good. Well, what I would say is that um, there if we don't provide what's needed, um, then yes, if life doesn't find a way, then there will be um, Planet of the Apes type of thing. And I once visited Goa in India, and Goa was a Portuguese colony for many years, from the 1650s, I believe. And there actually were 18 churches in Goa, and it's really a freakish experience to go through the area where these churches were now, because it's still jungle, and the jungles has taken over almost all of these churches, so that you see these huge vines coming up through the windows. There are no roofs. Some of them are tumbled down, and it truly is a visit to Planet of the Apes. So if you have an opportunity in your lifetime to go to Goa and visit that area, please do it. It's very important. Now, the good news, there is good news, and that is that there are two churches that still survive there. And one is a Catholic cathedral, and the other, I think, is a Protestant church. And those two survived, and probably were built much later than these many churches around. And it's not clear why all these other churches were abandoned, but apparently life did find another way, and there are still very devout Catholics and Protestants in Goa. Um, but many of the ways of the other churches fell away. Um, yeah, Deborah says a lot of modern life involves self-abandonment, and traditional ways help us connect to wisdom. Absolutely. And let's see, Arcana says the Holy Land will be filled with sepulchres and the dead. Only stories of your religion will survive, and these your children will not believe. The very air will hang heavy in lifeless torpor. I guess I read this before. And if you go to Jerusalem, you really find that. I mean, Jerusalem is like a bowl, a shallow bowl, and at the bottom of this bowl, it is the foundation of the um, Temple of Solomon and the um, Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Temple of Solomon obviously had originally the West Wall as part of it, which is traditionally called the Wailing Wall. That's the only part of the Temple of Solomon that has survived. Um, it's a very interesting place to go to, and within about half a mile of the entrance to the Temple of Solomon is Golgotha, where Christ was crucified. And the Via Dolorosa, which comes out of the Temple of Solomon at a higher level above the Wailing Wall, um, is actually an ancient midden. It's an ancient dump. And that's where people dumped their garbage. And it created a landfill, basically. And you walk across that landfill to Golgotha, where Christ was crucified. So obviously, all the religions consider that a sacred space, but it is all of them do the same thing, which is to make accessible the healing power of the unconscious. And so you're in the right place if you think I'm right. And Sheree says, there is a better way. Indeed, I am, and Deborah, I'm sick on Wednesday and slept in again. Looking forward to Wednesday session. I have to reset my biological clock to make it, though. I imagine, since you're on a late night biological clock. Cherie, Beethoven's Fifth is among the most memorable in music history. Beethoven himself said of these four violent blows, thus destiny comes knocking at our doors. You know, you think, bum, 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 bum. Um, and it was sort of the soundtrack of World War II. But it's still very powerful. Um, and then Deborah, abandonment of the churches in Goa could have been a result of the independence movement. Also, communionism became entrenched in the south of India in the 1950s with Marxism, less religion. Well, Deborah, I would say that these ruins in Goa were ruins long before the 20th century and long before these other events came in. Um, in my experience, and I do have photographs of my time in Goa, uh, although they're not in digital form, but um, it's very clear that those churches were abandoned probably in the late 17th century, is what I guess. Uh, and maybe in the early 18th century, but no later than that. Um, and Archiphanes in Rama, was there a violent voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and would not be comforted because they are not. Matthew 2:18. Okay, I accept that observation. Okay, I'm going to go on with this essay though. Okay, going on. So the point is, and I'm going to reread this last sentence, that Dr. Burns gives us. Jung's soul commanded renewal, the necessity to sacrifice his past heroic attitude and expectations so that a more comprehensive gnosis and scholarship could unfold. Okay, and he spent his next 40 years doing that scholarship and doing that writing. So depressive systems issue from a number of components, including brain chemistry and outer life circumstances. However, Jung developed and set forth a theory of the psyche that describes a process by which psychic energy naturally and periodically ebbs back into the unconscious, robbing the ego of initiative and of enthusiasm for projects connected with the rigors of outer life. When such a backward flow occurs, the individual faces the challenge of becoming an initiate, and life takes on a dramatically mythic quality. One apprehends the provocation of a call to accept and successfully resolve a secret task through which the initiating ego consciousness um, integrates an unknown potential. Even though one may feel caught off guard, this potentiality has ripened below the surface like a seed ready to sprout. A season of weather conducive to the sprouting seed prevails, and an insistent, even gripping synchronicity between readiness of the below and the above will convey the new sprout into fruitful expression. The birth of dormant potential position uh, of the growth, I'm sorry, the birth of dormant potential positioned for actualization in an individual's character exacts intense labor and begins with an invitation that commands acceptance. Okay, I want to speak about this call now because many times when people refer to the call, they are talking about one call in life. And yet, what I've found in my own life is that there can be many calls, and I've had many calls in my lifetime. Um, and each time I've had one of these calls, it's led to a kind of flowering of my life, a kind of addition to the depth of my life in many ways. And these calls occur often, and we have to first recognize them, right? And they often come out of depression, and then um, and answer the call, find out what it is, because the unconscious ultimately tells you what it is. And as my mentor and friend Colleen Kibert says, um, you can just doodle. It doesn't matter. You just do something artistic, anything. And sooner or later that you will have your call answered. Now, let's see, I want to show you my latest painting, which I finished yesterday. And you'll see what I mean. These are not for sale at the current moment, but I want you to be aware of them uh, because they represent how I find my call, um, which is not always easy, um, as some of you may know. But I'm going to share it with you um, and make your own judgment um, about it. I don't really care if you like it or dislike it. It's not That's not relevant to me because I'm not trying to make a living as an artist. But I want to show it to you so you understand my method. Okay, so here is the piece that I just finished yesterday. It took me um, about 6 weeks to complete this painting, which is 18 by 24. And I call it Whale of a Tale Evolution. And it represents to me, and as Colleen has taught us, we need to name a piece. So for the longest time, I couldn't think of a name, but it suddenly came to me, and it really uh, knocked my socks off. And so I continued the painting. And what I do in the morning is simply doodle. So this is for me. It's not for you. It's not for an audience. It's for my psychic health. And so in my case, because I have a very challenging job in a very difficult school, um, I often find my psyche challenged in different ways. But when I wake up at the morning and I pay attention to my unconscious, what it's telling me to do with my painting, uh, I get a result that looks like this. And um, you may not like it, you may not understand it. That's okay. I didn't do it for you, I did it for me. But, and you can find your own way, okay? But this is my way. And, my way may look crazy. In a sense, it is crazy, but it's, it represents the activity of my unconscious for that 6 week period. And, I can go into great detail about how I named this, but I'll just give you a few hints. Down in the lower left, you see a large mother whale, and over her back, you can see one of her babies above her. And then if you, at the center point, what you see is looking up through the water column. So our perspective is from the deep ocean, looking up through the water column and finding the light. And so the upper right represents the uh, process of moving on to land, represents the shallows that are lighter in the water, which attracted our ancient ancestors to decide to come out of the sea and become land animals. And so you can see there's more light there, and that was attractive to our ancient ancestors millions of years ago. So for my purposes, I think I got it. Whether you agree or not is of no importance whatsoever to me. But um, I wanted to share it with you. Okay, so um, anyway, all right. So moving right along. Um, my
Before you do, I just want to say it looks incredible.
Thank you. Um, and the interesting thing about this piece is that although I may make some prints of it with G clay printing, you will never be able to see the original except the original. Okay, this is a one of a kind piece. It's I used fluorescent and luminescent paints in it, so it shines throughout, and that cannot be captured by a photograph. And so if I make some large prints, I may embellish them. I'm going to try that and see how that works. Um, to make them more like the original painting, but they will never be able to match the original painting, not at all. Um, and so, uh, it's what I remember once with Monet. I always wondered, are people so interested in Monet's painting? And, I found it rather boring. If you look at it in a postcard, it looks rather boring. Um, I'm not that interested in flower gardens or flower ponds, lily ponds. And I went to see an exhibition at the Walters Art Gallery in um, Baltimore one time, and it just decapitated me because uh, Monet would put the paint on like an inch and a half thick, and and that cannot be reproduced on a postcard, no way, or put in a book. So when you see the original, you just see the essence of what the man was expressing, and in real life, you cannot not like it. Okay, you might not like it in a postcard. The same for me with Jackson Pollock. Who cares about a bunch of scribbles on a page? But
Yeah.
but when with Jackson Pollock, um, I walked into a gallery at the Boston Museum of Art one time, and drip painting number 31 was on the wall, and I immediately broke into weeping, and I wept uncontrollably for 10 minutes. I had no idea why, but I just couldn't control myself. And it took 20 years for me to find out that it was because I had not properly mourned the death of my um, roommate from the basic school during the Vietnam War. Because at the time I was very busy preparing for my own trip to Vietnam. And so I noted his death at that time, but I didn't have time to go to church or anything or talk to anybody about that loss and what it meant to me. But I learned and made that connection 20 years later. And I wept again when I made the connection. Um, so for what it's worth. Um, so let's see.
I mean, it's not a Norman Rockwell, but um,
No, it's not intended to be a Norman Rockwell.
I think it's great because you're sort of unlocking your unconscious mind, right?
Yeah, I mean,
That
that's the purpose, to communicate with my
yeah.
unconscious. And in my view, we got a lot of chemicals floating around
Oh
in there.
yeah.
And so that's more like what's going on in my unconscious than a Norman Rockwell. But on the other hand, Norman Rockwell was also exploring his unconscious, and the figures that he selected for his paintings and the paintings that he did are also mind-bending. And I'm sure for him, he was communicating with his soul. And so that,
Absolutely.
right? And that was so I'm not saying one should not like a realistic painting. Obviously, there are trompe-l'oeil paintings that can substitute for photographs, that you can't tell, and actually the trompe-l'oeil would seem more real than the photograph itself. Um, and I always wondered why people would do that, but um, it it can grab the psyche. And I'm sure the artists who do trompe it they do communicate with their unconscious when they're doing it. They must do. And they do make selections of their paints and so on. And so, regardless of whether we like it or not, I mean, for me, I say, well, gee, we have photographs for that and we have photography for that. But, honestly, um, as I've said, some trompe l'oeils are realer than the actual scene that they're depicting. And a trompe l'oeil just makes an exact copy of what's in the world, but it's in paint. And it can grab you also. And so for the artist, that's what he was doing. Uh, and the same with Mary Cassatt when she was painting little children and so on. All of those. I have a new Jungian book about brothers and sisters that has a Morissette painting of twin daughters, twin girls in portrait that was done in the 19th century. And you can clearly see the distinction between the two twins, even though all their features are essentially the same, but you can see how different these young women were. Okay.
Do
Um,
you have it on hand, the book?
no, I'm sorry. I have it upstairs in my apartment, so I can't show it right now. I might show it
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah,
Yeah,
show it to us
next
next
year.
week.
Yeah, next week. I'll
Next
bring it
time.
down next week and show you. But it's yeah. Well,
Have
uh,
you have you
what?
s- I mean everyone has definitely seen The Migrant Woman, which is a photograph and not a painting by Dorothea Lange.
I don't know. What are you saying? Say it again.
The, there's a photograph, it's called The Migrant Woman, and it's from the Great Depression.
Oh,
It was
yes.
documented by the famous photographer Dorothea,
Hmm.
and she also had this like moral resolve where she took these photographs of what was the end of an era where people were celebrating wealth and monopolizing and all that jazz, everything before there were actually laws and names for the things that people were doing back in the day, like grand larceny and pyramid schemes and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And then the Great Depression came, and sort of all of America had to pay for that economically.
Yeah.
And
And
there's the photograph of the migrant woman, and it's this woman who has two children, and she's in her 20s, but you would think in her picture, because she's so stressed out, you would think that maybe she's twice her age
no,
because of the impact of everything that was happening.
yeah. So now
And
I did find, the wish fulfilling jewel, as you were talking, I could go onto Google and find the actual painting.
oh,
And this is it. And you can see, the way two sisters are different, and their hands are hidden behind the fan, so you don't know what they're probably holding hands, but you can't see that behind the fan, and you can see the one girl has a ring and a bracelet and so on, and they're dressed
I love
identically. Go
I
ahead.
love that you've pointed out that that they could be holding hands,
Yeah.
because it's like there's this superstition adage that twins can are like telepathic
uh,
and that they can communicate with each other. So it's sort of like maybe in this moment that they're taking this photograph, they feel individuation, but at the same time, they know that they've shared the same womb at the same time and
Hmm.
went through the same things in synchronicity. And so now they're sort of holding hands because there's something that's being captured, and what they were feeling in that moment, I don't know, but maybe we can see from their eyes or their body language.
Yeah. And it's from 1869 is what it says here. Painting by Bert Morissette, which was uploaded on January 26, 2019. Of course, this is from somebody who wants to sell this painting, but um, or sell prints of it. So I'm not trying to sell prints of it. I'm just using it as an example of something I'm talking about for the moment. Um,
It also says a lot about the artist, because maybe he is also reconnecting or disconnecting from something in his own personal life,
it
or
was
maybe
Bert Morissette is the artist. It's a female artist.
with the twins. Oh, it's a woman artist.
Yeah,
Oh, that's so interesting.
yeah,
I'll definitely like to learn a little bit more about her.
yeah.
It's like Brett.
Berthe, Morissette, Morisset, and the painting is used on the cover of a book by Henry Abramovich, my friend who's a Jungian analyst in Jerusalem. And his new book, which is published by Chiron and is available on Amazon, is called Brothers and Sisters.
Isn't
So,
he speaking today?
so he's
Did he?
speaking to where
I think he doesn't he have. I think he has an event today. Was it today or tomorrow? He has.
I'm not
Yeah.
aware of that. I mean,
Oh,
I've interviewed Henry multiple times because he and Mary Stein, who wrote the foreword to Brothers and Sisters, um, the two of them wrote uh, the play called The Analyst and the Rabbi, which uh, I acted in Montana 3 years
yes,
ago
yes.
as Jung. So Henry and Mary are both dear friends of mine. I'm not close friends, but I consider them among my friends because
Yes.
they provided me with a wonderful
It's
play, a
today,
vehicle. I'm sorry,
and
go
it's
ahead.
on YouTube. Your play is also available on this channel. It's on
Yeah,
YouTube, isn't it?
correct. Yeah, it's a 1 hour play, one act play called The Analyst and the Rabbi, and in it I play C.G. Jung. I even grew a mustache for the occasion.
Yeah. And you look 10 or 20 years younger too.
When I grew the mustache, I looked younger.
Yeah, you looked so much younger, oddly enough. That's that's
I'm
the reason.
not sure that would continue to be true because my hair has turned quite white. So, um,
But he is Dr. Henry Abramovich. He's having the event today. It's at 1 p.m.
where
Brothers and Sisters. Yeah, it's
where
the workshop,
it's
Myth and Reality.
and so can you put the link on this chat and I'll forward it on to the YouTube channel. Do you
Okay,
have
I'll put it in the YouTube here.
okay, you can put it on the YouTube. Thanks. That would be
Yeah,
great.
and they have
Um,
really good rates. Oh, it won't let me. It's saying that the link is too long.
okay. Well,
but
you can always go to Bitly and create a smaller link.
yeah, but he's doing this all the way from Israel,
Yeah,
and he received emeritus award for outstanding professor, and he founded the Jungian Society in
Jerusalem.
Tel Aviv.
Yeah. Uh, no, in Jerusalem. He lives in Jerusalem.
Oh,
So I'm pretty sure. But I mean, I can't say that he didn't organize a group in Tel Aviv also, because Jerusalem and Tel Aviv are like 30 or 40 miles apart. They're not far. So it's quite possible that they did. But in any case, you can see very clearly why, if you go to Jerusalem, you finally understand why Jerusalem became such an important location in the ancient world, because it's very high up in the mountains. And it's a difficult road to get up to Jerusalem. And then I guess it's the caldera of a volcano, a very ancient volcano, obviously extinct now, um, but the bowl that Jerusalem is in, and that all the events of the Bible, or many of the events of the Bible, and essentially all the events of the um, life of Christ occurred in that bowl, basically. And if you're up on the side of it, you can look down and see all the locations that are discussed in the Bible, including the Temple of Olives, the Temple of Solomon, or what did I say? The Mount of, is it the Mount of Olives, something like that? And Golgotha, it's all right there, right in front of you, if you're up on the side of this caldera. Anyway, so Cherie says, again, I was listening to the writer Aldous Huxley in his own words on philosophy overdose. I always chose Aldous Huxley over George Orwell, although I respected both. Um, and, they woke us up to certain things 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Tanner House says, I can't believe ICE was dumb enough to make South Korea mad. They are pulling up old stuff from colonial times to compare what happened in Georgia. Don't know why I suddenly thought about that. Yeah, well, it's a part of our times, unfortunately. We're all living through it, and we are not called to kill one another over it. Life will find a way to resolve our differences. Deborah says, it reminds me of uh, the Diane Arbus photo of identically dressed young feminine twins. Ah, okay, we're back to the Morissette here. Tanner House twins make me think of dissociative disorder. Yeah, twins are often quite different. I have a set of twins in my school, and it's very clear that the story of Cain and Abel is played out again, yet again. It's archetypal, and it appears in uh, the twins that are my students. Um, and Cherie says 150 years of Zionism. Yeah. Uh, Edward Said's writings, book Orientalism. Okay, I don't know, let's keep the politics cool for a moment. Okay, and one other thing, Jesus spoke Hebrew pope. No, he spoke Aramaic. Absolutely. Yes, he spoke Aramaic. Um, and not English. And he was not a white dude. He was a Middle Easterner. And we confuse so many things in our society and in our culture. And, it's not a question of convincing people, life will find a way to resolve all the issues. Um, but you do something like this fellow that murdered Charlie Kirk this week. If you do something like that, you've killed two lives, okay? Your life and his, because he, no doubt, even if he is not executed, will spend, in essence, the rest of his life in prison. And, that's a horrible fate. Um, Teresa's Edward Said and child prodigy, uh, pianist and conductor Daniel Barenboim were close friends. Okay. All right. Moving on. We have to read some more of this. Think I think I know where I am. Okay. So, apprehended by a stack of stark realization, I had to become aware that I had lost my soul. That's a quote from Jung. All right. So it's a stark realization that Jung had, quote, I had to become aware that I had lost my soul, unquote. Jung turned to an inner journey, one that articulates a calling, a struggle, and a resolution, all converging into triumphant liberation. Jung returned to his soul, and after an extended journey of inner discovery and outer research, reconvened with himself, now strengthened with broadened perspective and revitalized strength. He received in symbolic language the essence of the ideas that subsequently manifested in a lifetime of teaching, writing, and clinical work. He achieved a renewal of consciousness, a restoration of purpose, and a vision of his continuing quest. And I absolutely concur with that statement and say that, you can have more than one vision, and as Jung did, and it can lead to multiple quests in your lifetime if you live long enough. Um, And Deborah says the inferior function is practically identical with the dark side of the human personality, according to Jung, Collected Works 9I, paragraph 222. They call the 12 steps soul surgery. That's in Alcoholics
Alcoholics
Anonymous.
Anonymous.
Yeah, Alcoholics Anonymous, and all 12-step programs are intended to reintroduce you to your soul, and therefore they're often chapters of Anonymous are often hosted by churches for that reason. Um, and Deborah says inferior function right now is thinking. Yeah, in the public space and the impulse leading to the assassination attempts, etc. Yeah, too much thinking. We need to do a little bit more feeling in our lives and understand that we are a species living on a limited planet, There are 8.5 billion of us. We all have souls. And if we don't learn to live together, we'll probably destroy ourselves, is what I guess. Um, okay,
And
reading on.
it's no joke. Oh, sorry. And it's no joke. I remember when I was in New York City during the election of the presidential election, and people were so confused because some people they were voting for Kamala Harris, and then they wanted to vote for Donald Trump. And it was very perplexing on how indecisive people were, especially millennials. And I asked my cousin, my cousin asked me, "Who are you voting for?" And everyone's going to hate me for this, but I said, "I'm not voting for anyone." Because I don't really know who to vote for. And then someone told me, "Why don't you vote for Kamala Harris?" And I said, "I don't know what to tell you." So I didn't vote for anyone. And and my cousin told me he was voting for Donald Trump. And mind you, he's very um he's introverted and very shy, and he's just a regular mediocre law abiding citizen. and and I asked him, "Why would you vote for Donald Trump for? You're not even a Republican." And he said, "Because someone needs to get the work done." And I said, "Well, yeah, I guess that makes sense." But now when we look at the work that's been done, it's sort of like hiring a contractor to, make some corrections in the home. And sorry about all the background noise. It's Europe and it's Sunday and all the kids are outside going
Oh,
crazy.
no worries.
So,
Go
sorry for
ahead.
the background noise of the kids. If you hear the kids screaming, don't worry, everybody's okay. They're just playing because it's Sunday.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So
so
it's like hiring a contractor and not being very satisfied with the result
yeah,
of
and
his
ending up
work.
with more, yeah, and ending up with more problems than you initially had,
Yeah.
you know, and and a lot of farmers are feeling it, and many
Yeah.
people are feeling it. I mean, some of the problems even before Donald Trump was president, some of the problems were there. The problems were there even before the Reagan administration. It's
Sure.
just things that are being neglected and
Right.
put aside.
And part of our problem is that our species renews constantly as, tens of thousands of babies are born every year, and each one of them has to be brought up to speed as a human being. And so they don't have the experience of older people, and they can make mistakes. Um,
I mean, I know from my generation, because we've been through 9/11. We've been through I don't know, there were a couple of Cold War, civil wars that some going into like a smaller popular demographic now. There's
mm,
people who had in New York, people who emigrated to New York because they came from Cold Wars.
mhm,
And so we survived all of these different things, the blackout of 2002 or something in New York City, and just so many different events that are going
yeah.
to be in history books. And
Yeah,
this
certainly
generation,
are. I mean, there was a
yeah.
huge blackout in 1963 when the Niagara Falls power plant shut down for, I don't know, many hours. And people were trapped in elevators. Many children were born And 9 months later, it was really quite something. Um, that's a kind of calling, I suppose. Um, let's see. So Deborah is saying the inferior function right now is thinking in the public space and the impulses leading to the assassination attempts, etc. Let's see. Sorry. Okay. Archifanis says the only adequate decision to make to Amela. Um, And Cherie says in 1912, Jung discussed the Hecate mysteries that flourished in Rome at the end of the fourth century. Hecate, the goddess of magic and spells, uh, guarded the underworld as the sender of madness. And she was identified with Bromo, a goddess of death. And Deborah says atrophy of feeling is a characteristic of modern man and always shows itself as a reaction when there is too much feeling around, and in particular, too much false feeling. Uh, think of the lamentation role of people, popular sentiment in wartime. Think of our so called humanitarianism. I only voted once. Cherie says I only voted once in my life, and it was a bet with Clancy, something Musland. I don't know what that is. And I won the bet, although not really. He made me he made me laugh out loud. Deborah says the psychiatrist knows only too well how each of us becomes the helpless but not pitiable victim of his own sentiments. Sentimentality is the superstructure erected upon brutality. This was written in Middle Europa in 1932. Cherie, who was Clancy Musland? So I would say syrupy nationalism, sentimentality. Voting is compulsory in Australia, says Deborah. And Cherie says, who was Chuck Chamberlain? Don't know that reference. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
So so just like in Gestalten psychology of perception, we see
Hmm.
these objects
Yep,
similarly to Jung's symbolism. And
exactly.
I'm seeing this now, even in your work that you showed today.
Hmm.
It's explaining to me, like, I don't even have to ask you, Skip, how was your week? Because I could just see the painting that you made.
How was my last 6 weeks actually?
Yeah.
Yeah,
How was your week? The painting tells me everything. It's you chose these colors, these shapes, and everything that you saw. Like, for example, yesterday, if you were at the diner having ice cream sundae and you were speaking to someone, and all around you so much was happening, and you wouldn't even know because you're focusing your attention on who you're speaking with and enjoying your sundae, but your ice cream sundae. But at the same time, all of these things are happening,
yep,
and you're not paying attention to it, but your sensations are, right?
sure.
You're there, you're present, you can feel someone passing by you, you can see in the corner of your eye someone is moving their hands around too much, maybe someone next to you and the table next to you, they were having a breakup or something. And now in your painting, you're showing that your mind is showing you, hey, this is what you missed. you know like
Well, yeah, and there's a lot in that painting. Just for grins, I'll show it one more time, um, because it's um, just so people understand what all is in there. Um, because what you can see is lots of faces, and some of them are kind of evil. So like down here in the right side, if you look at it, these paintings change by how close you're standing to the painting. So if you're looking at it very closely, you can see lots of faces down here in the purple area. And let's see, let me see if I can move it here. Okay, so down here you can see this guy who looks like he has an elephant trunk, and you can see, all kinds of different faces in this and here. And there are also, if you step back, then you can see the whale and the eye of the whale and so on from a distance. But for example, here you can see this guy with the green eyes looking downward. He's wearing a COVID mask, right? And but he looks scared to death. And then you can realize that it's not only this pair of eyes, but it's this pair of eyes, and it's this pair of eyes. And so there is a lot in this painting, and many different faces. And then here's could be a person's head and little eyes here and a nose, but here there's sort of an evil set of eyes and a nose looking the other way. And actually, I don't, I guess I can turn it just a minute. I can turn it on its side and you can see what I'm talking about. Um, that's too much of a good thing. Come on. Okay, sorry, don't get dizzy, everybody. All right, but if I turn it one time here, you can see it looks like Atlas holding up the world, this yellow here. So these paintings are amazing because what happens is you can display it in any direction. I've often thought about putting picture wire on the back of them so that you can hang it in any direction based on your mood. Anyway, for what it's worth. Now, what did I do to myself here? Yeah.
I'm sorry, you were trying to go back to reading the essay.
Yeah, well, the essay is long, so we're not going to finish it today. But I need to make my Zoom smaller so that I can see the, the YouTube channel. So so Deborah says, so the above quotes were from Jung. Cherie says, Clancy, a Muslim, ran the Midnight Mission for over 60 years. Chuck Chamberlain was Clancy's sponsor, and it took Clancy 10 years to get a year by living in care and making coffee in Alcoholics Anonymous, I guess. Uh, and again, Sheree, he ran a Pacific group for AA. He went to Akron, Ohio many times. He knew Bill W. Bill W. was one of the founders um, of AA, and I guess he's considered the main founder of AA now, although it was Roland H., who Jung knew, who Jung advised what to do. And Jung didn't even know that Alcoholics Anonymous existed for 30 years, and yet um, he was he was the progenitor of Alcoholics Anonymous. Uh, so Clancy was a renowned circuit speaker, and I loved him and his wife Charlotte very much. Very much. There is something about the 10-year mark in recovery. The old timers wax poetic about it, says Tanner House. And Sherry, Chuck Chamberlain was the actor Richard Chamberlain's father and is a great actor. He played Tchaikovsky with Glenda Jackson and other great roles. Uh, Dick Van Dyke was Clancy's friend, and Roland H. correct. Yeah. And fluid thoughts are called notions. Interesting. Okay, let's see if we can get through a little bit more of this. Let's see. So, reading on. During initiatory experience, anticipation of renewal appears alongside initial images of destruction. At the end of the third of a series of cataclysmic dreams appearing in the summer of 1914, Jung had the following vision, quote, there stood a leaf-bearing but fruitless tree whose leaves had turned into sweet grapes, full of healing juice. Through the working of the frost, I picked some grapes and gave them to a great waiting throng. Additionally, in a vision after the murder of Siegfried, I saw a merry garden in which forms walked clad in white silk, all covered in colored light, some reddish, the others bluish and greenish. I know I have stridden across the depths through guilt. I have become a newborn. The waiting throng in Jung's vision clearly anticipates the enormous impact his work was to have for future generations. His inner experiences elucidated in the Red Book informed research and theoretical assertions expanded over a lifetime, an opus of theory and scholarship that continues to provide healing wisdom to those with the courage to examine their souls. Jung's retreat into himself engendered an initiatory crisis that revealed the wisdom waiting to birth the word and image of inner experience and to uncloak an attendant meaning that brings relief to suffering. Consciousness in consciousness conscientious investigation into the irrational psyche, i.e., a return to the soul, together with artists and literary expression of his observations, informed by exceptional intelligence and a strong mind, allowed him to escape psychosis, inundation by the unconscious, which is what psychosis is, as well as what many people experience as a threat of debilitating depression stemming from the backward flow of psychic energy. And, I would say that, yeah, that, I've experienced this in a Jungian kind of way because when I wrote my novel, I put it in a drawer and then I chose not to write not another novel because I didn't want the inner self to start coming back at me. And it was already pretty intense when I did that. And, but I saw it, as a kind of threat to my career. And so I didn't go back into it. Jung answered the call of his soul, a call that hurled him into an inner other world, a world orchestrated by mystery, containing interactions and motifs particular to his unique life. His adventure closely follows patterns of traditional initiation rituals as reported by certain individuals who, since the very beginning of human history all the way to this current time, have served as mediators between people and their gods. We typically refer to these particular members of the traditional community as shamans. Jung, however, had no traditional elder, no agent or master of initiation, no one experienced in numinous phenomena to assist him, no guide, guru, priest, initiated shaman, or analytical psychologist to offer direction or give support, and certainly no one to interpret his dreams and visions. He devoted himself to the task. Okay, so he spent his lifetime writing his interpretation. He was such an intellectual and so thorough as a scholar that his books are filled with footnotes, and it it was so far gone that for a long time I couldn't get it. I couldn't get what he was talking about, and couldn't get anything here or there. But when I now read things like this and have read things like this over the last 30 years, I start to understand myself and what was happening to me at that time. And it can happen to all of us, no doubt. And so, what I would say is um, it's best to learn how to communicate with your psyche in small doses. People who follow religions regularly do have, some sort of clergy that can help them through if they're going through some sort of crisis. And I'm not sure clergy really understands that that's what they're doing. I can't say that, and I'm not saying that this writer, Dr. Kate Burns, what that she's saying that she's certainly not talking about religion yet. But what I'm saying is that what Jung revealed to us is basically that all religions, the origins of all religions were to help people get through things, right? And to understand what was going on in the unconscious. And they all turned to prayer, which is a way of turning to the unconscious. You can certainly do the things that I'm talking about through prayer, but paintings, doing the kind of painting I do is a kind of release for me because it's somewhat controlled. I do allow the unconscious to tell me what to do. all the time, but I'm physically unable to do it for more than, let's say, 3 hours in a day maximum. And most days I don't do it more than an hour, and often it's only 15 minutes because that's all I have time for. Um, but physically I can't handle it for more than 3 hours. That's in my own experience. And so you have to come back to your real world, and that's a way of controlling. And so that's why I think it works well. Um, let's see. Cherie says Clancy passed away in a nursing home when COVID was going on. I kept in touch with Clancy for many years, even after I left Santa Monica, California. And Richard says we are all psychotic to some degree. And Cherie says, I will pass this on to Clancy. Clancy never yelled at me, not once. Laugh out loud. I spent hours on Skid Row. Um, and so um, all this is very interesting, of course. And hmm, anyway, let's see where we are. So I just want to read so you don't want the backward flow of psychic energy, that especially psychic energy from the shadow. Okay, so I'm going to read one more paragraph. Jung answered the call of his soul, a call that hurled him into the inner other world, a world orchestrated by mystery containing interactions and motifs particular to his unique life. His adventure closely follows patterns and traditional initiation rituals as reported by certain individuals who, since the very beginning of human history all the way to this current time, have served as mediators between people and their gods. We typically refer to these particular members of a traditional community as shamans. Jung, however, had no traditional elder, no agent or master of initiation, no time experience. I guess I read this before, but no one experienced in numinous phenomena to assist him. No guide, guru, priest, initiated shaman, or analytical psychologist to offer direction or give support, and certainly no one to interpret his dreams and visions. He devoted himself to the task. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. I guess I stopped there one other time several years ago when I read this. But I'll mark this as 9/14/25. So I will begin again on the next time. I'm on page 219. I've been reading from Soul's Desire to Become New, Jung's Journey, Our Initiation. And it's from Jung's Red Book for Our Time, Searching for Soul Under Postmodern Conditions, written by Murray Stein and Thomas Arst. Um, Okay, so you know the point is that Carl Jung had the help of the fact that he was already a made psychiatrist. He was a practicing psychiatrist when this all happened to him. And most of us haven't had that benefit. I certainly did not. And I certainly did not have any clue about what had happened to me when I wrote my novel, other than the fact that I now know and have known for a long time, if I wanted to write a novel, I could put myself back in that state. Now I might be less frightened of my own unconscious. But in 1993, when I did that, um, I didn't dare go back into that space. And it was only in 2009 when the Red Book was published, and I saw that what could happen to a person, and in this case, the greatest psychiatrist, psychologist of the 20th century, um, if it could happen to him, then I guess I'm not crazy. Yes, and but I didn't really understand that. I started to understand it when I read the Red Book, but now I think I've grokked it, so I guess we're okay. But I don't claim to be a Jungian analyst nor really very smart about these things, so please don't follow me. Uh, you have your own. Uh, Deborah says Jung has some mystical signature in his horoscope. Neptune is a transcendent planet with the moon connected to emotion and Pluto as and Pluto's transformational. Third house is communication. Jung was born sensible. Moon in Taurus is exalted. Okay, so yes, Jung was born sensible. Fortunately, he had all his own experiences, the experiences with his mother, um, long before the Red Book period. And so he was able to manage this period on his own. It doesn't mean that we all can do that. And but at the same time, as Kate Burns is explaining to us, um, Jung can be our shrink, okay? And John Beebe, Dr. John Beebe once said that Jung was my shrink. I agree with that. By reading his books, he helped me maintain my mental health over a whole bunch of critical times in my life, but allowed me to have a very rich and meaningful life. People can't believe the kinds of things that I've done in my life. And, I've had some of my kids that I'm now teaching since I was 75. I started school teaching, who say, if you're so smart, why are you doing what you're doing? And I couldn't even begin to answer that for a 14-year-old. you know uh, I guess I tell them that my 10 grandchildren have to live in the same world that you, my students, live in, and I'm hoping to leave a better world than I've experienced in my own life. Um, So, in any case, Amela, thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Deborah, Cherie, especially Richard, and Art, for all of you being here today. I hope it's been useful to you. Keep in mind that our only purpose here is to help you develop an access to the healing power of your own unconscious. You can get the same service from any religion that you wish to choose. None of them are wholly right and none of them are wholly wrong, nor is anybody in any of the political parties around the world wholly right or wholly wrong. And so we have to pick and choose and use our wisdom that we gain over the years to make good choices. So Melly, you wanted to say something in closing?
Um, I wish we could revisit the part about the back shadows because it kind of caught me. I cannot explain, but there's some kind of a synchronicity between what you said about the backward shadow, and I was envisioning, I'm not sure if you were saying it, but in my mind I was envisioning like a river going in the opposite direction than what it's supposed to go into.
Yeah, that happens. Some
And
sometimes rivers run in the wrong direction.
yeah,
You um,
I was thinking about Yayoi Kusama.
mhm,
She's a Japanese artist. Let me see if I can I share the screen for 1 second
sure.
to show
So,
you her work?
yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Let's see what I have to make you a co-host.
So
Okay, there you go.
she uh Yayo Kusama, she suffered with schizophrenia,
Hmm.
and this is her work in the background. That's her.
Oh
That's
my
what she looks
goodness.
like. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's her. And
Wow.
yeah, she inspired, arguably many people say that other artists like Andy Warhol, for
Yeah,
example, and many
sure.
other predominant artists,
Yeah.
that they were inspired by her work.
Hmm.
And while so many people were giving credit, by the way, this is from the Louis Vuitton Foundation.
Hmm.
And so while they were so fascinated by other artists who were inspired by her work, she fell into this deep depression and attempted to take her own life.
Hmm.
And that's her.
Yeah.
And she jumped out of her window, her apartment window, and tried to unalive herself. But fortunately, she survived the attempt and she continued to share her work with us. And I cannot even imagine how it must have felt to be a person with schizophrenia, having, seeing your work basically like a mirror of your work,
Hmm.
and being discredited, and people focusing more on her illness and not on her talent and her craft.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing that came to my mind. She came to my mind because, for me, it's like Andy Warhol is sort of like her back shadow. He's like her animus, or her archetype
Hmm.
of of her psyche, basically.
Yeah. And interestingly, I get, I don't know, 5 to 10 headlines a day on my my watch, my iWatch. And one of them yesterday was, and maybe I still have it. Here, let's see. Oh, yeah, here it is. It's from Apple News in Conversation. she had, talking about somebody else, not Kosama-san, but she had schizophrenia for decades. Then suddenly she didn't. What one woman's recovery reveals about the biology behind mental illness. Okay, so I don't know how you would get to read that whole article, but that's what came in on my iWatch yesterday by synchronicity. And, and I believe, when I meet the children that I teach, many of whom are diagnosed with ADHD, I say to myself, my God, we have too many Freudian analysts around. Because these are just kids. These are kids. And for the most part, uh, they're normal kids. They're a little bit rougher. They've lived in rough communities and they're a little rougher than your average kid, but they're kids. And I've seen these types all of my life, and I don't feel that they're disabled personally. I do not feel that they're disabled. Now, please understand, I am not a mental health professional, and some of them are on medication of some sort. Um, whether that's good or bad, I don't know, but I do feel, um, one of the reasons we have alt schools is that it takes some of us human beings a little bit longer or different path to live in the modern world. I'm sure um, Art Patterson can tell us all kinds of things about that. Um, and but they're people, and I expect some of them to do great things in life, and hopefully they'll live long enough to achieve that. Unfortunately, they live in a culture that is saturated with illicit drugs, and so it's our job to keep them alive until they can get it on their own. Anyway, that's one of the things that we do. Um, and so let's see.
Self-analytical activity.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
That's what's necessary. Self-awareness.
yeah. So here's an interesting conversation that's worth talking about. So Deborah says, yes, there was an exhibition here in Australia last year, and she had a collaboration with Louis Vuitton. Other artists stole from her work, and she had a nervous breakdown as a result. She was tremendously bullied in her life, from the Japanese males to Andy Warhol, who was very self-promoting. She went to the U.S. and barely survived as an artist. What Warhol did was a colossal betrayal. The stress tipped her over the edge. Uh, and Cherie says, heavens, it's wonder and hell, and from things heard and seen by J. Randall, London, from the Swedenborg Society. Now, Deborah says most mental illness is uh, trauma based. Um, I was shocked to discover this. And yes, many of my students have had serious trauma. Um, and Warhol was a marketing phenomenon. Yes, absolutely. And Sheree is talking about a different path, which but says, I lived in New York City from 78 to 90 on Sutton Place. I had a rose garden and birds and a tree to look at through my windows on the second floor. Interesting. Um, so, what I would say about uh, this lady who I don't know her work before this conversation, and I don't know the story of her with Andy Warhol, but if you're going to be an artist, you have to have a thick skin to, um, you have to care about what you care about. And as Colleen Kubert, our mentor, often says, the great artists of the 20th century, um, saw what they wanted to achieve and they paid no attention to anybody else. And so that is definitely what Jackson Pollock did. He paid no attention. He knew what he was doing and he did it. And unfortunately, he didn't know how to properly regulate it. Um, and what I would say to anybody who is an artist, who does art, and who people are copying, you have to remember Rudyard Kipling's poem. Um, I forget exactly what it was called, but it's about the sinking of a ship. And it's the ship is metaphorically is a the ship is a metaphor for his life. He's a great industrialist and he's dying, and he's giving advice to his son on his deathbed in this poem. And there's one verse in the poem that I've always paid attention to, and that is they copied all they could follow, but they couldn't copy my mind. I left them sweating and stealing a year and a half behind. And so if you do something amazing as an artist, you will be copied. There's no doubt about that. I've been copied a few times in my life. Um, and and it's hurtful. Um, I've long thought that Diary of a Geisha, the story that was turned into a movie, actually had its origins in my novel, but I couldn't prove it, and so um, I left it. Um, but um, but plagiarism is a fact of life in the human condition, and so you need to just be out ahead of the plagiarists, and you'll be the famous artist, and they won't be. Uh, I guess I would say that. So, any further comment, uh, Mela?
No, but I think I might have found the poem. Is it the Mary Gloucester?
Yeah, the Mary Gloucester. It's about a ship sinking, but it's a metaphor for his life.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's in the Kipling Society
Yep.
website. It's
Hmm.
there.
It's called the
But
Mary Gloucester. That's correct.
I like this poem. I have a couple of poems also to remind me to self-regulate. One of my favorite poems, is about don't I can't remember who something you have to make your dreams into action, for life is a frozen barren field, or something
Something
like
like
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so instead of being stagnant and putting myself down, I have to keep carrying on. Actually, this Korean couple that was on my flight with me heading to London, the woman, she saw me reading my red book, and she asked me if her granddaughter could join the society. And I asked her in the very little English that she understood because she's a housewife,
hmm
in the very little, and her husband, he was doing a lot of business in Asia. He was a businessman in import and export.
hmm
But anyway, so very interesting. I have to share this story another time because they were very interesting. And she asked me, how could my granddaughter join the Jungian Society? And I asked her, is your granddaughter a psychoanalyst? She said, no, she's a social worker, but she just finished her internship. And I said to her, psychology is very broad, and there's so many different philosophies of psychology. There's many different schools of psychology, but psychology, the philosophy of psychology, sometimes you choose the right one, or sometimes it chooses you.
Yes, very
and i
much
said
so.
and I said to her, have you ever seen the movie Harry Potter? And she said, oh, Harry Potter, yes. And I said, okay, so you remember that scene when they put on the hat and the little hat tells them, you go to this group, you go to that group, you go to that group? I said to her, take it easy on your granddaughter. There will be symbols, there will be signs. She's going to be introduced to it. Maybe she's not going to know right away that this is the path, but eventually it will happen for her. And I remember my uncle telling me the same thing. I said to him, I don't think I'm going anywhere in my life. I was studying fashion merchandise and marketing. And when I said this to him, and he said to me, you know, the Sacred Family Church? I said yes. He said, well, the guy, he was just any ordinary poor artist who was
hmm
using whatever he can to make sculptures and art. And one day someone said, I like you, I believe in you, you're creating my consciousness, the levels of my consciousness, my psyche. I see it in you. You are the one. You are my one. You are my oracle to my visions. To you represent me, and hired this man. And till this day, the Church of the Sacred Family is still being completed. And this
Yeah,
guy's
sure.
been gone hundreds of years ago, and he left behind a legacy. So maybe your memoirs of the geisha isn't going to make it in this lifetime, but lo and behold, one day someone is going to be on a spaceship floating around in another Earth,
Right, right.
reading Mayoko and saying, "Wow, this is really great."
Well, and you could always say about the granddaughter that she could watch this YouTube channel since there's YouTube told me I had 661 videos on here. And so there's a lot of Jungian psychology in this YouTube channel. Um, and we've had a few sessions since then, so it's probably more like 1670 now, something like that. And we actually have in the can uh, many, many more videos of the advanced reading group that have never been published. I have permission from the members of the advanced reading group to publish them, but I've never had time to do it, and I've never done it up until now. So, but they're there, and someday they'll be published on this YouTube channel if I can have the breath to do it. Okay,
Well, you're
there's.
gonna have to be around for my wedding, Skip. I already
I
know
look
I'm
forward to it.
inviting you.
I look forward to it. Is it going to be in Montenegro?
I have no idea. I know he's
Okay.
going to propose to me. I told him don't propose to me yet, but I know he's going to.
Well, you're certainly, I, I'm certainly pleased to attend. Absolutely. So anyway, I wanted to read a couple more of these uh, e YouTube. Some of them have just gotten beyond me, but Deborah says an artist lived in the house in Paris at at the rear of my grandmother's as a child. She would see him painting in the garden. It was Henri Matisse in Paris. It was so hard for Murakami as a woman to post in post-war Japan and in New York City in a male-dominated field. Uh, I took a photograph, and so I'm going to stick with Deborah's line here. Uh, it's so fantastic we have the technology to bring us together and have uh, near instant access to the sources we as we speak. And Richard says, make art that no one can copy. I used to make folk art that from garbage and bits and pieces of broken things that no one would even give a second look at, much less use it for art. I eked out a living for many years. Well, good for you, Richard. And my friend Tim Holmes, who we often speak of in this channel, um, he is famous for using found things in some of his sculptures, especially his metal sculptures. Sheree says, I have all of Rudyard Kipling's poems that my papa taught me from the library as a child. One of my fascinating, among others, a ballad burial, one of my favorites. And Deborah says 21,000 subscribers. Yes, I have so 21,000 subscribers. And amazingly. And Archifact says Kipling is great. Deborah, keep your head while others are losing theirs. That's important. Uh, and and I think you're quoting Kipling now, and he was giving other advice. Um, and Sheree says the works of Rudyard Kipling, one volume edition printed by Walter Black, Incorporated, New York. And Tanner House says, congratulations. I'm not sure who she's congratulating or what they're congratulating for, what she's congratulating for. Um, anyway, I was impressed by Rudyard Kipling for many years. I now regret the fact of knowing that he was a member of the British Raj of India. And he wrote a poem called Gunga Din, which I've um, recited in public back when I was in high school and when I was a young man. Um, but then I started to realize what the British had done to the Indian people and and the plunder that they had taken out of India, the British. You have to read a book called The Anarchy to understand its importance. It was Barack Obama's favorite book in 2019, but it talks about how a British company that was founded just before 1600 basically ruled India, and uh, it operated as a great power in its own right, even though they were Englishmen, but it was a company that was allowed to have its own army. And as a result, the what they did, or what that company, which had no scruples, did, as companies have no scruples, by the way, they're just pieces of paper, they're legal constructs. And so it had no scruples, and it stole a lot of the wealth of especially West Bengal, but also the rest of India. Eventually, it was all of India. Um, they took the Kohinoor diamond, among many other things, um, and the British Crown actually contains the Kohinoor, as I understand it, the Kohinoor diamond, the biggest diamond ever found. And even in the crown, even though uh, one of the princes of Wales had it cut down, it's still, uh, in its current form, it's still one of the biggest diamonds in the world. And, people were just idiots in those days. And somehow, you know, at least the British Crown needs to make reparations for that. I often think about that because at one point before 2008, a colleague of mine and I developed a plan to build a skyscraper in uh, Hyderabad, India. And unfortunately, that plan went by the board with the crash of 2008, and caused by um, corporations that um, have no humanity at all. They have no humanity. They're not human beings. They're legal constructs, and therefore people get away with a lot of things behind the facade of a legal personage, which is a corporation. And you can see the worst example of that in William Dalrymple's book, The Anarchy, which is excellent. I highly recommend it. Um, um, yeah, and Deborah says true about companies, and Kipling being associated with the East India Company. Everyone has to be somewhere, and nobody's perfect, not even Jung. And of course, this is true. And Jung was surely not a perfect man. Um, and Sharice says, I wonder why Leo Tolstoy chose Milton over Shakespeare. I don't know. I don't know what that's a reference to. And Tanner's house says Prince Harry is in Ukraine. I'm sure he's up to something, no doubt. Uh, and Deborah, Harry has a particular commitment to injured soldiers, and especially those with amputations. That's why he's there. At least that's the public reason why he's there. And Richard says, what happened to dialysis that used to, Dionysus, that used to comment on here? He had a YouTube site. It was all Poe and very interesting. I don't know, Richard. Okay, everyone, it's now 12:35 and we're way over the assigned time. And so I'm going to excuse myself because I am going to watch the Indiana Fever, who I will root for in the first women's NBA basketball game this afternoon at 3 p.m. And unfortunately, Caitlin Clark is not able to play anymore this year because she was badly injured early in the season. But the Indiana Fever has definitely pulled it together to the point where they've gotten themselves into the playoffs, and I wish them well. And I don't know who won the Navy game yesterday, but I'm going to look it up right after this. So peace, everyone. Have a great week.